Hi, it's Katrina. My friend David is going to be helping me out with the voiceover today, so I hope you enjoy.
Number 10. Jesus' Secret Teachings. Biblical scholars have recently discovered the very first known copy of an ancient forbidden text written in Greek. This text describes the secret teachings of Jesus Christ to his biological brother, James. The discovery was made by Jeffrey Smith and Brent Landau at the University of Texas. They found it in the Oxford University archives, where it had been buried for centuries. The texts come from the 6th century AD and were part of an ancient collection of religious writings known as the Nag Hammadi Library. The texts from the library were found in 1945, buried in Egypt. They complete a collection of 13 Coptic Gnostic books, known by some as the Gnostic Gospels. These were the holy books used by Gnostic Christians who believed in a more mystical Christianity. They were more about the spirit and the cosmos than a wrathful God. However, most of their books were banned by the church because they were seen as heretical or blasphemous. At least 13 Gnostic books were deemed forbidden and largely lost to history. The new pieces of text that were discovered come from the Gnostic book called the First Apocalypse of James. The document is shocking because it describes the teachings Jesus shared with his brother James. It discusses things like the heavenly realm outside our own reality and inevitable death. These teachings were much more mystical than the ones you find in the New Testament, which was exactly why they were erased by the church. Number 9. The Book of Adam and Eve. The Book of Adam and Eve is not something you're going to find in any traditional Bible. It's a story that describes what happened to Adam and Eve after they left the Garden of Eden. It's another one of those extra-biblical books that modern Christians say has no relevance in biblical canon. In truth, the book was written around the same time as many other biblical texts, a few hundred years before Christ, and it simply extends the story of the first two humans on earth. As you may know already, the story of Adam and Eve is one of the oldest tales in human history. The first important event in the book is when Cain murders his brother Abel. The book claims that Cain and Abel both had twin sisters, meaning Adam and Eve had 4 kids, not just 2. Cain fell in love with his own twin, but Adam and Eve wanted Cain to marry Abel's twin. Furious, Cain murdered his brother, and the rest of the book discusses how the family tried to deal with it. It goes into some pretty gruesome detail. When the blood of Abel touched the earth, the planet trembled. Cain kept trying to bury his brother, but the grave kept spitting out Abel's body. Adam and Eve eventually took the body of Abel into a cave and laid it there to rest. Number 8. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas. In the Gnostic Christian texts found in Egypt, we see a lot more about the magical teachings that Jesus shared with his disciples. But there were also some other bizarre stories discovered in Egypt in 1945. The mysterious Nag Hammadi Library also contains a book called The Infancy Gospel of Thomas. This book is a biography covering the childhood days of Jesus Christ. It begins with his birth and moves through his childhood during the 1st century AD. Out of all the other Gnostic scripts that were never included in the Bible, this one was deemed heretical and was banned. In the 5th century, Pope Gelasius I even added it to his list of heretical books that nobody was allowed to read. To give you an idea of how extreme Gnostic Christianity was, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas was considered controversial even in the year 180 AD, when Irenaeus of Lyon called it spurious, meaning false. Modern scholars believe the tale told in the book was likely transcribed from an oral story that had been passed on since the days of Jesus Christ. Nobody knows who authored the book, only that it does appear to detail Jesus' young years, and the story ends when Jesus turns 12. Yet even as a child, Jesus is depicted as a sage. There's a specific line in this story that you might find interesting. Jesus' teacher is telling him, "Say alpha," but in response Jesus says, "First tell me what is beta, and I can tell you what alpha is." The books are filled with these strange, cryptic riddles and teachings. Number 7. The Mysteries of the Hebrew Bible. New research just might change what we know about the early history of Christianity and Judaism. According to scientists from Tel Aviv University, a new discovery proves the Hebrew Bible was written much earlier than anyone realized. The research also suggests that in the Kingdom of Judah 2,600 years ago, there was a shockingly high level of literacy. Researchers used cutting-edge computerized image processing to analyze a collection of ink inscriptions found at the remote fort of Arad. They were able to determine that the Hebrew Bible was written prior to the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC. Scraps of text found at the edge of the Kingdom of Judah show that the Hebrew Bible dates to at least the 7th century BC. Their research also proved that the Hebrew Bible was written by at least 6 people. This shatters the notion put forth by the Church that Moses was the author of the Hebrew Bible. By analyzing the wording, phrasing, handwriting, and other tiny details, the computers solved the mystery. They were able to see what ordinary eyes could not: the faintest signatures of 6 like-minded authors. Researchers at the university believe there was a group of literate individuals in Judah who began work on what would become the most important book in history. But it wasn't until the fall of Jerusalem 200 years later that the book was finished and widely distributed. Number 6. The Apocalypse of Adam. The Apocalypse of Adam was found among the forbidden texts of the Nag Hammadi Library in 1945. It deals with the first man God created, Adam. On Adam's 700th birthday, he tells his son Seth about his life when he and Eve first met. Adam describes how he and Eve were even more powerful than their creator, a primeval entity called Yaldabaoth. This was the name of the Gnostic creator god, a serpent deity not unlike Satan himself. According to the Gnostics, he was the super-powerful being that created human life. He sent rays of light from the heavens into the humans' bodies to give them souls. But Yaldabaoth was envious and mean. He tried to limit the knowledge of his human creations by imposing nasty rules upon them. When Adam and Eve broke the rules, Yaldabaoth split them into 2 different genders, male and female, and promised them one day they would be forced to die. This is definitely one of the crazier books that was never added to the official Bible. It goes on to talk about hidden knowledge that Adam received from 3 mysterious men. Adam claims that the sub-creator God, the celestial being beneath Yaldabaoth, will try to destroy humanity by sending a global flood to wipe them out. Adam also says that after the flood, God will give the earth to Noah, and that Noah's sons will inhabit the world. Humanity will then be forced to serve God in fear and slavery for the rest of time. What do you think really happened when Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 5. The Book of Giants. The Book of Giants is by far one of the most exciting and fantastical forbidden books of the Bible. It's set in the days before the flood, known as the antediluvian time. Its main characters are giants, angels, monsters, and a man named Enoch. It draws most of its inspiration from the Book of Genesis, although it isn't generally accepted as fact by Christian sects. It was discovered in fragments during the 1940s as part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's a true document and was written prior to the birth of Christ. And yet, it tells such a strange story that early Christians refused to add it to their official book. The Book of Giants says that angelic beings known as Watchers were ordered by God to watch over the earth. While they were watching, they became fascinated by human women. These angelic beings then abandoned their posts and bred with human women, which led to the creation of monstrous abominations called Nephilim. The book details how the giants knew it wasn't their fault, and yet their existence was an atrocity anyway. They even had dreams of the coming flood and their inevitable demise. The giant named Mahaweh eventually sought help from Enoch, who told him that the giants needed to stop being so sinful. But the giants didn't want to end their wicked ways, and so they were all wiped out by the flood. The Watchers, who couldn't be killed by a little bit of water, were then rounded up by angels and locked up forever in a dark prison. Number 4. The Apocalypse of Abraham. Nobody knows who authored the Apocalypse of Abraham. It's an ancient biblical text based on the work of the Old Testament, likely written about 40 years after the death of Christ. The only surviving copy of this mysterious book is preserved in Old Slavonic, an ancient European language. It's not currently regarded as an official text by any religious sect, and supposedly it was only ever accepted by the extinct group known as the Bogomil sect. They were a neo-Gnostic group founded in Bulgaria in the 10th century. They never really caught on, and then out of nowhere, they vanished. The book revolves around the biblical Abraham, and the first 8 chapters are a massive introduction. It talks about how Abraham slowly converts from believing in multiple deities to trusting in the one true God. This section is mainly a lesson in idolatry or the forbidden worship of false idols. But things only get stranger from here. Abraham is instructed to prepare a sacrifice high up on Mount Horeb. The angel Yahweh, assisted by several other angels, is sent to help Abraham. But then the fallen angel Azazel shows up to seduce Abraham. Azazel comes in the form of an unclean bird, and he and Yahweh get into a fight. Azazel is defeated, and the rest of the book talks about Abraham's ascension to heaven. God even gives Abraham a personal tour of the universe, showing him all the celestial bodies and all the tiny moving pieces of the world. Then, as a final treat, God gives Abraham a vision of the apocalypse. God shows him how the Messiah will come at the day of judgment to fight the Antichrist, and afterward, the world will cease to exist. Number 3. The Ethiopic Bible. If you're interested in a Bible that has it all, you need to switch from the King James Bible to the Ethiopic Bible. The King James Version, used by most people in the Western world, contains only 64 books. The Ethiopic Bible, on the other hand, has 84 books. This is because it includes most of the texts that have been lost or rejected by other churches. In Ethiopia, there is a Bible protected in a remote mountain monastery 800 years older than the King James Bible. This ancient version contains 88 books, including all 3 books of Maccabee and the highly controversial Book of Enoch. It's believed to be one of the earliest illustrated Christian books in the world, called the Garima Gospels. According to the legend, the ancient Bible was named after a monk who arrived in Ethiopia in the 5th century. The monk then wrote the massive book in just one day, because God stopped the sun from setting. Number 2. The Pauline Epistles. The letters of Paul, also known as the Pauline Epistles, are the 13 books found in the New Testament that the Church attributes to Paul the Apostle. It's important to note that these are not forbidden books. The Pauline Epistles are in the New Testament and are considered canon by most Christian theologies. Epistles are letters, and in this case are the letters that Paul the Apostle supposedly wrote to the Romans, Galatians, Corinthians, Philippians, and Thessalonians. But although these books are official in the Bible, they aren't without their controversy. Most scholars agree that Paul wrote 7 of the main letters, like the ones to the Romans and the Corinthians. 3 of them, 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus, were likely written by somebody else. That other person could have been Paul's secretary. In other words, Paul wrote the main parts of the letters in the New Testament, and the rest of the work he shrugged off on a ghostwriter. If this is true, it means many parts of the Bible were written by somebody's secretary. But how could anyone possibly know this? It's because the style of writing is dramatically different, as is the theological content of the text. Biblical scholars with keen eyes have noted through the centuries that the letters were written by different people. Number 1. The Apocalypse of Lamech. The Apocalypse of Lamech is a mysterious ancient religious text discovered a year after the Gnostic texts were found in Egypt. It's one of the original 7 Dead Sea Scrolls that were uncovered in 1946 in Israel. The book is composed entirely in Aramaic, with only 4 sheets of leather remaining. It's one of the least preserved Dead Sea Scrolls that we have, and so piecing together its contents proved difficult for researchers. The text was eventually deciphered as a conversation between Lamech and his son Noah. So far as experts are aware, there's only 1 copy in existence of this book. Roland de Vaux, a French Dominican priest who worked very closely with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, believes the Apocalypse of Lamech might be the original authored copy. It was likely written by the mystical sect of Jews known as the Essenes. They were a group of people who believed they were put on earth to prepare the world for the coming of Jesus. Weirdly enough, they existed from between the 2nd century BC until shortly after Jesus' death and resurrection in the 1st century. Some say the Essenes had secret knowledge of Jesus' coming and had hidden the Dead Sea Scrolls on purpose for future generations to find. There isn't too much new information in this book that can't be found in other religious texts. It appears to be extra-biblical writing, meaning it adds relevance to other stories in the Bible. This particular book adds more information about Abram's terrible treatment of Sarai in Egypt. It adds the fact that Abram was told by God to lie to the Pharaoh about Sarai being his sister, when in reality she was his wife. Which book do you think is the most fascinating forbidden book of the Bible? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.